Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, we are talking about the Phoenix Suns and their signing of Jay Crowder away from the Miami Heat. Before we get too far into it though, I want to remind you to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support lately and I hope to see that continue. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The Suns signed Jay Crowder, 3-and-D wing, who is more D than 3, as he's super inconsistent from the three-point range on the offensive end of the floor, but on defense he always brings it. He did lose some of his quickness following a knee injury that he had a couple years ago, but he still fights really hard on defense. He's super strong and is one of the better matchups for the big wings that are really prominent in the NBA. He does a great job of defending them, and he's going to be an important guy to have on any team that's looking to make a run in the playoffs, which obviously the Phoenix Suns are after acquiring Chris Paul. And I think that this was another really good move for them. You'd wish that he'd be more consistent on the offensive end, because from three-point range, he's super, super inconsistent. You'll see him have a playoff series where he doesn't miss. He had it one against the Bucks, and it's a big reason why the Bucks lost. And then against the Celtics, he had one of his worst three-point shooting series of his career, and he just couldn't knock one down. So, because he doesn't bring much else to the table on the offensive end of the floor, you'd wish that he could contribute a bit more and be more consistent with the three ball. But he does knock him down occasionally, and he's never afraid to pull the trigger, which does mean that defenses have to take him into consideration, and they can't just leave him all alone in the corner for a wide open corner three. So he does increase the spacing on this team, and they already had really great shooters to begin with. So it's just another added guy for them to use to space the floor. I think he fills the biggest need for this team, which was wings. They had actually some really good depth at the wing, and then they traded away Kelly Oubre, so they needed to add one. And I think Jay Crowder can do that very well. Obviously, they didn't even have Oubre in the bubble when they went on that 8-0 run, but I don't think that this team would have made the playoffs had they not made the Chris Paul trade, had they not signed Jay Crowder. Once you get that breath of success, it would make sense to be complacent and say, well, we did well in the bubble. Why not run it back with the same group and try to replicate that success and have another good season? But they didn't do that. They said, okay, well, we have a good young core here. Devin Booker's a good player. Mikal Bridges is a good player. DeAndre Ayton's a good player. Devin Booker's a great player, actually. I don't know why I only said good. But Cameron Johnson's a good player. Like, we have a good young group of guys. Now let's do what we can to get some vets up in here. They added Chris Paul, they added Jay Crowder, and that is going to make this team very fierce and a team that nobody wants to play come playoff time. I disagree with the Jalen Smith draft pick. I don't think that he should have gone in the top 10. I don't think he should have gone in the top 20. But I don't really have a but. Drafting a guy who I don't think is going to be able to play the 4 because he's not good laterally, he's not quick, and he really can't guard on the perimeter. So that means you drafted him to be DeAndre Ayton's backup. In the playoffs, DeAndre Ayton's going to be playing anywhere from 34 to 38 minutes per game. So that means Jalen Smith is limited to 10 to 14 minutes per game. So you'd use the top 10 pick on a backup. That's not, in my opinion, what they should have done. But it does make sense because he is going to add some floor spacing to them. And if he proves me wrong and proves that he can play the 4, then this pick starts looking a lot better. I don't think that he is a 4, so that's why I think Crowder will start to begin the season for sure and probably throughout. Cameron Johnson is another option that they could go with to start at the 4, but I like Johnson coming off the bench just because having a guy who can come off the bench and shoot the way he does really can bring a spark to your team and get them going, get the fans into it, although there's no fans this season. And that kind of spark plug electricity, knockdown shooter off the bench is super important. They also have made some outskirts kind of moves that have increased their bench depth and made their second unit a lot better. I really liked that they were able to hang on to Jevon Carter and keep him around as a guy who can really guard some of the best ones and twos in the entire NBA. And on the offensive end of the floor is a pretty good shooter and can space the floor for your team. Doesn't need to be on the ball all the time, even though he is a point guard. That's super valuable to a team, and I think that it makes him a perfect complement to Devin Booker. Having him off your bench as a 3-and-D guard is going to be super valuable. He brings the same kind of stuff to the table that guys like DeAnthony Melton do, that guys like Chris Dunn do, although he's a better shooter than either of those two guys, that a guy like Tyrese Halliburton would have done had they drafted Halliburton. But he's a lot cheaper than any of those guys. So overall, I think Jevon Carter was one of the better value deals for the entire offseason. I think that the Suns did a really good job keeping him around. They also accepted Cameron Payne's team option and kept him around on a veteran minimum deal. Obviously, Cam Payne was a bit of a meme for a while because he just wasn't a very good player in his first couple of years in the NBA. People viewed him as like the tank master because teams that were tanking signed Cameron Payne to be their starting point guard. But during his time outside the league where he was playing overseas, he really got better, and now, as he proved in the bubble in those 8 games with the Suns, he's ready to play a role on a good NBA team as a backup point guard. So adding those two guys, both of them on very cheap contracts, were very good moves for the Suns and add some much needed depth to this team. So they now have a starting lineup of Chris Paul, Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, and DeAndre Ayton. I don't think that there's a whole lot of teams that can match that starting 5. And really 3 of those players are super young still in Paul, Bridges, and Ayton. So that's their core that they're building around for the future, and I think that core gives them a real shot to make a deep Western Conference playoff run within the next couple of seasons. I don't know if that season is this year because Chris Paul and Jay Crowder are very good, but I'm not sure that they'll be able to take a team that won, was it 33 games, 34 games this past season? And it was a short season, so maybe they would have gotten into the high 30s had it been a full 82 games. But I'm not sure they can take that team and make them into like a 55-win team that has Western Conference Finals potential. But I do think that this is a playoff team for next season. Let's run through the Western Conference and talk about which teams I view as better than the Suns. You start with the Lakers and the Clippers. I don't think that there's a debate to be made that the Suns are better than either of those two teams. The Nuggets and the Trailblazers, in my opinion, are the 3rd and 4th best teams. And that's where it starts to get a little interesting. I don't think that the Suns would be favored to beat either of those teams in a playoff series, but I do think that they could pull the upset. So now we're getting into the range of teams where it's close. After that, we come to the Jazz. I still think I would take the Jazz to win a playoff series over the Suns, but once again, very, very close. After that, you have like the Warriors and the Mavericks. That's more the tier I view the Suns in. So I would say that this team is anywhere from the 6th best team in the Western Conference to the 8th best team. And that is a massive improvement over there where they were years ago. And after another couple years of growth from their young core, once we get to see what kind of players Cameron Johnson and Jalen Smith actually are as they continue to improve as their rookie deals run on, that's where I think that this team can be dangerous. This season, well, let's talk about some other young teams that we've seen the past couple of years. We'll start with my favorite team, the Milwaukee Bucks. One year, they made the playoffs. Well, actually, no, we won't talk about the Bucks because they took a downward spiral this season and didn't make it past the second round. But we'll talk about last year's team that I think has a chance to be what the Suns aspire to be, and that is the Denver Nuggets. 3 years ago, the Denver Nuggets missed out on the playoffs by 1 game after they lost to the Timberwolves in what was basically a tiebreaker game. Win or go home. The team that wins is the 8th seed in the playoffs. The team that loses goes home and doesn't make the playoffs. The Nuggets fought in that game, but they couldn't come away with the victory, and they went home. The next season they came back and fought and made it to the playoffs. They won a playoff series against a shorthanded San Antonio Spurs team, advanced to the second round, and in that second round they brought the Trailblazers all the way to 7 games before losing. So right now, you start off with a team that missed the playoffs, and then they made the Western Conference semifinals. And then this past season, you see the Nuggets come back from down 3-1 against the Jazz, come back from down 3-1 against the Clippers, and then play a really tough 5-game series against the Lakers. That series was only 5 games, which would indicate that it was a blowout, but the Nuggets really pushed the Lakers, and in my opinion, that was the toughest series the Lakers had to play in their playoff run. So you've seen them go from not making the playoffs to being a Western Conference semifinals team to being a Western Conference finals team, and I think that there's a chance that this year we see them make the NBA finals. So this is where the Suns are. 2 seasons ago, they were one of the worst teams in the league. Got the 6th overall pick in the draft. And then last year, we saw them take a jump, and they ended up finishing as the 10th seed in the Western Conference and being a team that really battled and was respectable throughout much of the season. So now we need to see them take the next step and make the playoffs. Once they do that, we can start talking about them as a Western Conference Finals contender. But at this point, I view the Suns as a team that's going to finish anywhere from the 6th seed to the 8th seed, and I'm really excited to see what this roster looks like. I think Jay Crowder is going to be a perfect complement. He's going to create floor spacing for Devin Booker and Chris Paul, which those guys don't even need spacing in order to work. So the fact that they are going to have that kind of spacing is super good for them. I actually think that we could see Jay Crowder take a market improvement in his three-point shooting efficiency due to the open looks that Chris Paul and Devin Booker are going to generate for him. I think that he's a really nice front court complement to Mikal Bridges. Those two guys are going to be absolutely locked down. No wings are going to be able to score on this team. And I think that there's a chance that they win a playoff series, and overall, I am betting on this. I'm not 18, but if I was, I would be betting on this team to make the playoffs, and I'm very excited to see what they look like in this upcoming year. To recap this offseason for them, I like the Chris Paul trade. I think that it accelerates their timeline and takes them from being a playoff contender to almost a playoff lock. I don't love the Jalen Smith pick, but outside of that, their free agent moves have been really good. Signing Jay Crowder was great. Signing Javon Carter was a nice move, very savvy, and I think there's still a chance that they can bring back Dario Saric, and I would expect them to do that. That will give them one more guy to add to their big man rotation, and I think that would be a really nice way to cap off this offseason for the Suns. I'm really happy with what they've done, and I think that this team has a good chance to be a scary team in the playoffs next year that could take a team like the Lakers or the Clippers to a 6th or 7th game. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Are you as high on the Suns' chances this upcoming season as I am? Are you maybe even higher? Do you view them as a team that could actually plausibly make a run at the Western Conference Finals? Let me know. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I think that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all very soon.